Boogie here. Yeah, I got a haircut. You probably noticed that right off because you don't miss a thing. Anyway, happy International Women's Day. It's Mother's Day here. Okay, it was established by the communists. They didn't have a Mother's Day. Mother's Day actually, I think, is an American invention. Maybe not. I don't know. They had a long time ago, though. Officially. The communists established International Women's Day. And it's turned into Mother's Day here because people are organic, and if something doesn't fit, they make it into something else. I can call it Mother's Day. They pretty much call it Mother's Day here, too. Women's Day's only Women's Day, but mothers, and especially grandmothers, are really honored. Anyway, so what's going on today? The world is changing. It's changing. It hurts. It's not predictable. This is predictable, actually, to an extent. But I think the Hedgie man is losing. You know, the Boogie man is the Hedgie man. Let me look at my notes. In Ukraine, the news was absolutely mad. I was a news junkie for last week. This week, the available information has waned on my sources. There's a reason for that. I'm going to the next stage of the operation. I'm providing some information in the description how you can go find your own information. I could open up all these pages and show you maps and all this stuff, but it hasn't changed much from last week. It really was dynamic the first several days, and now I don't know if it's stopped or you're just not getting much information. The tactics that the West, the Ukrainians, the hegemon is using are horrifying. It's a media war. It's information war. Before I tell you what they're doing, I'm going to tell you you got to keep something in mind. You have to think strategically and keep something in mind and use logical consistency to you'll see this. You know, this conflict didn't start a week ago. It started 8 freaking years ago. You just weren't told about it. It was suppressed. You didn't get to hear about the Donbass being bombed. I know I flog this all the time, but the media flogs it as though it doesn't happen all the time. So I'm going to keep beating on it. They've been shelling civilian areas, the Ukrainians have, at U.S. direction, and unleashing crazy Nazis who have been armed by the U.S. on the Donbass for 8 friggin' years. It's a lot of casualties. I think there's 14,000. I don't know if it's all civilians or it just includes them. But anyway, they had to defend themselves. And Russia finally says, okay, this has gone on long enough. This isn't going to change. We tried every diplomatic avenue. They had to ceasefire because, well, the LPR and DPR got the Ukrainian army and the Nazis and the Polish and American advisors and mercenaries. They got them in a cauldron. It was a real bad situation. Actually, they did it 9 times. And the last cauldron was the 9th one, and it was a big one. Whole bunch of people were getting ready to take a dirt nap or get captured. And so the U.S. instructed their people to call a truce, and that's when the Minsk agreements were agreed to. And the European powers said they would help enforce it. Nobody did anything. The Minsk agreement were just completely ignored by Ukraine. They continued to shell and bomb. A little bit of a limited. They did restrain themselves a little bit. It was kind of they were sneakier about it. They were still shelling civilian areas, suburbs, apartment buildings, shopping malls, continually. All the while saying they were shelling Russian invaders. There's video that I've seen. It's really hard to find everything now. They're constantly scrubbing it because you're tech people. Google and Facebook and YouTube, they're all on the same page with this, and they let you see what they want you to see, what the people tell them to. There's videos of captured Ukrainian soldiers that run in fire bases. They brought them in and showed them what they were shelling. You know, they were just getting their information. They're getting their coordinates from the forward observers who are Nazis. The Nazis and U.S. U.S. observers were telling them where to shell. They're giving the coordinates, and they're loading up the guns and firing away and say, yeah, we're killing the Russian invaders. We're no Russian invaders. They were bombing hospitals and schools. They brought them in and showed them what their targets were, and they cried like little babies. Talking like little kids. Might have been crocodile tears, I don't know. I think it was real. They were very young, they were kids. Anyway, that's the way the system worked. Finally, this happened. It is inevitable. Nobody would back down. They had a sweet thing going. We're provoking Russia. We got this stick and we're poking the bear with it and getting away with it. And finally something happened. And the Russians invaded and attacked. You know, it's just sickening. The whole thing's just sickening. Anyway, I have got a bunch of information and analysis. And I made notes. I actually made notes. I'm such a mess here. Like I said, the news cycles, there's a lot of news coming in from my sources, and I know people on the ground. This isn't Kremlin bots and propagandists. No, this is Americans and Germans and English, a few English people, very few, that are on the ground in Donbass. They have been for years. Some of them have been there for throughout the whole thing. They were there from the very beginning. And I provide links to their YouTube channels. And what they're saying, and what people that are connected with LPR and DPR are saying, we're saying, that's where I got my information. And it's been pretty successful. Russia and the LPR and DPR have taken a big swath all the way from surrounding Kyiv all the way down to Mariupol. And there's a few spots that are still open, last time I checked, going all the way to Transnistria, over to near Odessa, going up and go back up to Odessa. I don't know how far they've got on that, but then the information just kind of stopped. There's a reason for that. Because one thing that, if you look at some of these sites that I've given you for information, especially Nova Russia, or I'm not even sure if I got that right. The sites change because they get blocked and banned all the time by the freedom-loving tech people at YouTube and Facebook. Anyway, the site's down here. It's in the links. I probably got the name confused with something else. And I just turned the pages wrong and lost all my notes, but that's okay. I got them here somewhere. Oh, here it is. Anyway, the Russians control everything, pretty much everything that they want to control at this stage. There's pockets of Nazis, and maybe some Ukrainian regular. A lot of the Ukrainian army has been surrendering to the Russians and teaming up with them against the Nazis. You haven't heard about that. The Nazis control, especially Mariupol. They don't let people leave. The Russians establish corridors for people to be evacuated, and they get sabotaged and they get bombed because the Russians announce this is a corridor. Well, they go up in there and mess it up. And the Ukrainian army's doing that too, to an extent, from what my information is. They want to keep people in there. They want to have massive civilian casualties so they can say, oh, look what Russia did. They killed all these people. And the West is causing that because that's what the West do. You think there won't be some spiritual reprisal for that? Everybody doesn't do it. I don't see anybody doing it but the U.S. and Great Britain and their little lapdogs in Europe. That's what they've always done. It's what they did in Syria. It's what they did everywhere. They don't mind civilian casualties. They've had millions of them, literally millions of them. When they bombed and tore up stuff, somebody fights back. Oh, they killed civilians. That's what the white helmets was for. Propaganda wing. And they couldn't even find enough civilian casualties, so they made some and filmed them. And you've got the equivalent of white helmets here in Ukraine with all these NGOs and all these charity organizations and all these people with their little blue and yellow murder puppet flags. It's an operation. It's a well-funded operation. But what they've been doing, the nationalists, let's call them nationalists, but they're Nazis. But people cringe when you say Nazis and don't think that there can be Nazis. They are Nazis. They're hardcore. Anyway, They're setting up fire bases in heavily populated areas, and they're not letting civilians leave, so they can just fire away at random on everything. And if somebody fires back on them, well, they killed civilians, and the U.S. will dutifully report, the Western media will dutifully report it exactly that way. It's sickening. It's absolutely sickening. Well, what's at play here? It's the one world government people against people that want a multipolar world. You've probably heard that Dugan is Putin's brain. He's not. He's just a political philosopher that Putin says some of the same things that he says. So they're probably on the same page with a lot. They are on the same page. Putin doesn't want a one world order. People want to think, well, he just wants his own one world order. No, they're establishing a multipolar order described. This is a pretty good description of it here. I don't know if you can even get this book in the U.S. You could probably order a PDF of it or something. I don't know. I've looked around and had trouble finding it except from these sources, the websites of I think you can find a lot of information on geopolitical.com. If you want free information, you can go to geopolitical.com and let's browse around in there. You can find all kinds of articles and things. Anyway, the goal of this is for everybody to have their own little place, the sphere of influence, where they can develop their own culture, local controlled and owned resources, no colonialism, no imperialism. Oh, kind of like that. It sounds pretty sweet, doesn't it? And the basic UN charter was so nations could solve disputes by other means other than war. Nobody's going to impose their will on somebody else. So that's out the window. UN has turned from charters to agendas. As people say, Putin's just in with the UN just like everybody else. No, he's not. They altered the Russian constitution in 2020 to make Russia sovereign, where they do not give any bearing or any weight to laws that are not passed in Russia. You don't have to go by these UN agendas, and you don't have to go by other people's laws. That really hacked off the New World Order crowd. Anyway, just brief rundown synopsis, trying to put everything in perspective. Russia tried to join NATO a long time ago. I don't remember, I think it was 93 or something like that, and I wouldn't let them join. What's the purpose of NATO? This is to fight communism. Well, now it's to fight Russia. What's Russia done? Well, Russia's got resources and offers a possibility of competition and doesn't do what they're told. U.S. defense security has creeped. You got mission creep, because I don't know when it was. I think it was in the 80s when they started saying potential competitors are a security threat. Really? Yeah. People that don't sell you resources for penny on the dollar, is this a security threat? It's against the interests of the United States. And so it's a military job, to put them in line. You really want to live in a country like that? Why don't you do something about it? Can you? You don't have much control over your own foreign policy. Competitors are threats. People that don't open up their economy to our industries are threats. It becomes a military threat. We got to do something about it. You send the NGOs in, you send the CIA in, you bump off some people getting away, you organize protests, you bring in snipers and Gene Sharp, color revolution technology, and you have your way with them. You lock up their gold. You block trade. You take them all. You unplug them from the banking system. If they got gold in the city of London like Venezuela did, you just take it. They took Venezuela's gold. They said, "Oh, we're keeping it because you don't do what we told you to." Yeah, and then you got Charlie Kirk's and Ben Shapiro's sitting there telling you, "See, socialism doesn't work." Well, I'm not saying it works or it doesn't. You seem to have an awful lot of socialism in some place like Sweden, and it works just fine. But it doesn't work in Venezuela because people are poor. Well, they're poor because you blockaded them and unplugged their banking system and stole their gold. It might have something to do with it. But, the neocons and the unfortunately paleoconservatives and middle-class regular Americans buy into this stuff. Anyway, I've included a link in one of my earlier videos. I'll include it again here. I didn't really go into detail on this. I should have, because everybody's not going to see the same thing that I see with it. It's Michael Millerman is being interviewed by Steve Piken. He's a Canadian. I thought he was a paleoconservative. He's really just a classical liberal. He's okay, close as a Jewish man can get to being a paleoconservative. You take paleoconservatism and remove the basic Christian outlook, and you've got this guy. He seems like a pretty nice fella, but they had a little back and forth about Dugan's beliefs, and Mr. Piken was just absolutely appalled, and he made some really good points, but you got to look at the date. 2014 was when this interview took place. And it was easy then to make the point because the Dugan translator, the guy that helped Dugan's translation of the book into English, he's a Canadian, Millerman, his parents were emigres from Russia. And he's going on about how Dugan's against American liberalism and hegemony, and because the ultimate, basically the ultimate point of it's inevitable where liberalism goes. It goes into extreme techno-oligarchy. And in 2014, a lot of people couldn't see it. And Piken even asked him, he says, your parents came here from Russia. You want to go live in Russia? Isn't it great to live here where you can have all kinds of money and nice things and say whatever you want? Boy, things have changed since then. So why would you want to leave Canada for Russia? There's probably a lot of people that would do that now if they knew the truth about Russia. You've got a real serious techno-oligarchic corporate tyranny going on in the West now, and it's only going to get worse. They're going to get what they want at home, in your home, as well as overseas. And you're not standing up against that when you stand against Russia. When you go against Ukraine, you're going along with the one world government people. You're going around with the people that brought in, I don't know who they were. They had the cops in Australia beating people for protesting against the mandates. Mandatory DNA altering vaccines you have to get all of a sudden to keep you from getting the cold, right? And they're beating people and gleefully beating them and jabbing their sticks into them. And a lot of these cops, the most violent ones, they had a special emblem on their uniform. Same thing in Canada. They brought UN guys in to do that stuff. They're a specially trained division of the UN, I think. Yeah, some of these NGOs and these agenda UN factions. UN isn't a whole thing. Well, neither's Russia. There's people in Russia that hate Russia, and they want New World Order stuff. They had vaccines in Russia and QR codes and all that stuff. Well, that's all water under the bridge right now as we're busy trying to eliminate resistance. Where I'm talking about the New World Order people. I'm fighting it. A lot of people don't know who their enemy is. And they look at this Ukraine thing. It's an operation. And it's successful, too. Everybody's waving their little blue and yellow flags around. They just want to be independent. And really, they want to be independent because the United States threw out their elected government and staged a coup and put Nazis in charge and start killing people that resist. Anyway, I thought it was really telling. I looked at this interview again, and this is in 2014. Why would you want to leave Canada? We got it made here. Well, it's only going to get worse. It's going to get a lot worse. They screw the lid down, they let it off a little bit, and then they screw it down doubly hard. It's like when you're making you got a really big bolt and your wrench is too small, and you're tightening it down as tight as you can. You get it where you can't move it anymore. Okay, now you back it off and you run into it. That's what they're doing. They might back off and relieve things a little bit, and then they're going to run it down real hard. They're going to stage an event that gives them an excuse to do it. That's how they manage things. That's how your liberal democracy works now. And I don't understand why you like Dugan. Oh, he doesn't like liberal democracy. How can you be like it? You want to live in Russia? It's going to get more and more obvious and more laughable. You want to be in the avant-garde? You want to be on the cutting edge? Read some of the stuff that I've provided material on. This is great stuff. Oh, I want to recommend this book. This is my internet buddy, He's from Uruguay, I think, if I remember correctly. I got a lot on my mind. I might misspeak, but this is fantastic. I haven't been able to get very far through it. I'm too busy. I'm less than an eighth of the way through it, but it's great. It is fantastic. It's a great book. And you might not be into all that. You might know what's going on, and you don't want to participate, or maybe you can't. Right now, the ruble is just bottomed out. It's just. Yesterday morning it was 120 to a dollar, and then yesterday evening it was 150 to a dollar. I haven't even checked it now. I'm not going to bother checking it. I don't have any money anyway. But prices haven't gone up here yet. I don't know if they will. Our economy's isolated from that. They're isolating us, which is good. The sanctions have the same effect on Russia that tariffs did on the U.S. The U.S. government was originally designed to operate off tariffs, not income tax, tariffs. That's how they did before they established the emergency measure during the Spanish-American War that was supposed to be temporary, the income tax. Yeah, that's where that came from. Before that, it was run on tariffs. You protected your business and industry from outside forces, cheap labor and such, with tariffs, and the tariffs funded the government. Well, Russia's learning that real good, because we don't have tariffs as much as we have sanctions, which makes us develop our own industry and be self-sufficient and provide jobs here. Doesn't that sound sweet? You're not going to do that because your government is subservient to building a one world government, a new world order, a great reset. We're not. Tariffs are cool. You have your own little place and do your own thing in your own time, as the political philosopher Jeff Spicoli said. Then you can be bogus too, man. Anyway, a little humor there, all right, just in case. I have to tell you that. No, I got a great audience. I haven't had hardly any trolls at all. Everybody understands things, and nobody's coming at me with little excruciating, tedious details. Got a good audience. I recommend this book too. I recommend two political books, so I'm going to recommend this one here. You're going to need this. Right now you're flying high and feeling mean, but it's going to bounce. There's nothing to back up the dollar but American military force, and you're losing it. You're losing it technically. You're losing it through alliances. Russia and China made a special alliance. Yeah, and Iran is in the mix. Iran has got a very powerful military, and they're real big on missiles. Hezbollah has enough missiles to get rid of all the U.S. bases in the Middle East. If they're such horrible boogeyman, how come they haven't done it? They can, but they don't. Anyway, I got a lot of links. I got a lot of articles if you want to read, if you're into reading. It's got real good information. I think I've said just about all I was going to say here. There'll be a lot of links. And I'm going to shut this off now, I think. I've been at this for years, and I've learned to spot, like when you have an article that says something that you know is absolutely, it's wanting to do narrative support for what's happening. Well, the Ukrainians are about to win. Russia's sorry that they ever tried to do anything. You know, you see articles like that, and you look into them, and the first 100 comments are, or even worse yet, have articles explaining, why Ukraine is being attacked by Russia, and it's just pure bullcrap. They tell you Ukraine was a sovereign ancient European nation for 1,000 years, and what? You're out of your mind. And they tell you all these crazy lies, and then the first 100 comments on the thing will be, "Thank you for informing me. This was very educational." Educational. And then the next one will be, "Very educational. Thank you so much. Now I understand." And then the next comment is, "I've changed my perspective by watching this educational article." The cadence and the word choice is just not quite right. This isn't real people. And you go through, all of them have this weird cadence to the short little blurbs. "Thank you for educating us. We have a different perspective now." They all say pretty much the same thing, just in different wording and different links and everything. They're bots. They put these articles in and then flood the comment area with bots. This is an information war. That's the amazing thing is that it actually works on so many people. You know why it works? Because you watch your shows and you plugged into media all the time and you're programmed with a certain way of thinking to identify with the hero and the underdog and go along with the narrative no matter how absurd it is. You've been conditioned to that since you were a child. People want to know, they want to understand. Tell them to stop watching freaking television. Point out to them why it's so harmful. Anyway, yeah, you probably heard a television playing in the background here. My children are watching a traditional movie that they play on Mother's Day. It's very, very old. It was made back in the 50s, I think. Just like you watch A Wonderful Life and Christmas. I don't know. If it was up to me, I wouldn't have a television in here, but it's not entirely up to me. You have to make little compromises with your family. Anyway, that's enough for this one. Uncle Bill D, signing out.